Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. I am Olakunle Kasumo. Xenophobia in South Africa has been a headline news in Nigeria and many other African countries in the last few weeks. Information coming out of South Africa have been depressing, with violence breaking out in areas largely occupied by foreigners in the country. Nigerians have particularly been caught in the middle of the crisis, inevitably sparking diplomatic tension between Nigeria and South Africa. But the relationship between the two countries go way back before xenophobia became a headline subject. During the dark years of apartheid, Nigeria became a frontline state in the campaign to free South Africa from oppressive, institutionalized racial segregation. Our guest author today is a distinguished former diplomat, Ambassador Tunde Bade Afuye. During his years in foreign service, he served Nigeria in many countries around the world, including Botswana in the Southern Africa region. His book, The Rise and Fall of Apartheid, has received good reviews, and it reveals, like few other books have done, the story of apartheid and the role of Nigeria in bringing it to its knees. Ambassador Tunde Bade Afuye joined us to review his book and discuss things related. Enjoy it. Ambassador Tunde Bade Afuye, thank you for joining us on Channel's Book Club.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nice to have you here. The Rise and Fall of Apartheid. I mean, this book has never been more relevant than this period, where there is a lot of conversation and issues around xenophobia in South Africa, and then the tension between Nigeria-South Africa relations. But reading this book, I found it very enlightening. I remember the issues of apartheid back then, when apartheid was still, very much at the front burner of international issues. But there were quite a lot of revelations I saw here, some of them very shocking. The extent of apartheid, what apartheid really meant, and how deep the hatred that the white minorities had for blacks, back in those days. So let's do a general overview of your book, Ambassador, for those who are out there. The Rise and Fall of Apartheid, Nigeria as a Factor. Now,
about the book, in 1948, as I said earlier on, apartheid had always been in South Africa, but it was codified and formalized
in 1948.
In 1948,
when the Afrikaners came into power.
When they came into power, that was when it was codified and formalized. From that moment, it became extremely difficult for black South Africans to make any recourse to law. They could not go to court of law to seek redress because all the courts were packed with Afrikaners. And from that very moment they took over, it was a period of agony for the blacks, especially for the blacks. Yes, if you go through the book, you will see where one of the apartheid ministers, Soa by his name, Soa by name, said that they will accommodate the colored people because of our blood they share. As for the Indians, we will have to deport them to the Indian continent, the subcontinent, where they come from. For the blacks, we have to create a special Bantustan place for them to stay. So it was clear to all but the blind that Afrikaners who were in control did not wish the blacks very well. In education, in every aspect of the society, they never wanted them.
Ambassador,
yes.
let's calm down a little bit.
Okay, all right.
Afrikaners, you explained in your book, came primarily from Dutch lineage. Is that correct?
Yes, and of course from many other countries.
Many other countries.
Yes.
And they were different from, of course, the British.
Yes.
So I think we need to explain that very well for people who are outside of South Africa, who may not really understand that.
The Afrikaners came principally from Holland, the Netherlands. But you had many people from France, from other European countries who later coalesced into a group, forming their own language, which became Afrikaner. And these Afrikaners, when they took power now, made sure that the whites, make sure that the blacks not only got put to the sidelines, but that in taking power by the Afrikaners, they made sure that all the ideas which I mentioned before had to be processed alongside their very objectives. Their very objectives was that there was no way the blacks could come to power at all. They never proposed it at all.
And you explained also in your book,
yes,
that philosophy of white supremacy, had a religious basis.
Yes.
It wasn't just an idea. It was an idea based also on faith, yes, and philosophy.
Yes.
So that made it very strong.
Yes.
I enjoyed that part of the book. Yes, it was really eye-popping for me.
Yes, yes. The Brother Bond was a sort of organization that provided the ruling party, the ruling Afrikaner party, some kind of inner workings. So there was nowhere in South Africa, in the South African society, that the Brother Bonds members did not represent the society.
So they are taking over
They took over everything, just like when we talk of mafia, this and that in Nigeria. But in actual fact, you can contest the question of mafia, but this one is real.
Complete total control.
Everywhere you find them.
And you also explained how even the laws in South Africa, every major law concerning elections, concerning usage of public infrastructure, purchase of land, tenancy, concerning marriage, every major law, they had tweaked the laws to favor whites and oppress blacks.
Yes.
There was a part where you said there was a time when the black majority occupied only about 7.3% of land, yes, in South Africa. So it was really serious, wasn't it?
It was, actually. That is where the concept of Bantustanism came in. You create a special area for the blacks where they are supposed to channel their grievances. In other words, you do not want them at all to be part of South African society itself. You push them to the heads, to the corner, where they are expected to bring up their frustrations and whatever it is worrying them. So the whites, the Afrikaner, as I said before, never planned to see the blacks in any part of on any relevant part of the society. They never. Yes.
So the oppression was total. Now, a core part of your book is Nigeria as a factor, the role Nigeria played in fighting apartheid. And then you went extensively into explaining Nigerian foreign policy. Look, Nigeria has had a lot of problems. Corruption, infrastructural development, all sorts of developmental issues. But reading your book, I said to myself, Nigeria has been great in terms of foreign policy. When you think about it,
yes,
the role Nigeria has played in Africa, ensuring peace all over Africa, and particularly in the fight against apartheid.
Yes. Even when you consider the West Africa sub-region, we have always played a very key role in the settlement of crisis, in pacification certain restive areas. And when you move further, even in the Southern African sub-region itself, where you have white exclusive regimes, in Rhodesia, now called Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, in Angola, we had always played a very crucial role. Without us, I make bold to say, there was no way those countries would have had independence.
And you should know. I mean, you served in Botswana.
Yeah.
You served in. So, how about apartheid? Talk to me a bit about apartheid, in terms of the role Nigeria played in dealing with apartheid.
Yes.
And let's then contextualize. How does this link up with the xenophobia that we're seeing today? Talk to me about that.
Yes. You will recall that when we were in the even secondary school, universities, Nigerians were made to pay certain amounts to the benefit of the fight against apartheid.
Really?
Yes, it's in the book. At a point, one lady, whose name I've forgotten now, is in the book, decided to send, at that time, a princely sum of 100 naira, a lot of money at that time, for the help to fight apartheid. And so it was that gesture that encouraged President Obasanjo, General Obasanjo then, to inform his foreign minister, Brigadier, what's the name of this?
It's not Gambari, is it? No. Okay,
I remember his name now.
Yeah, we'll pick it up later.
Yes. It was now, because of that consciousness, instructed Brigadier Gaba, who was the foreign minister, to form a committee that would look into areas to assist South Africa. And so that committee became very, very relevant to the entire question of South African liberation efforts. Not only South Africa, but also relevant to the question of all the other white exclusive regimes in Southern Africa.
You wrote that Nigeria spent about $61 billion.
Oh, yes, yes.
$61 billion.
Yes. And that was also confirmed by many scholars of international relations.
In the fight against apartheid.
Yes. Why?
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. You know what fascinates me especially is that as soon as we spent that, in many countries of Southern Africa, we have not been appreciated. Our efforts had not been appreciated at all. They do not, and as a matter of fact, today, you cannot go to any countries in Southern Africa where the history of efforts of Nigerians towards liberation of those countries, you find it in any of the books. You can't. They make sure that even the young ones are not aware of what efforts we contributed to liberate those areas, which is very sad.
So, Ambassador, we can go on and on and on.
Yes.
Thank you very much for joining us on Channels Book Club.
Indeed, a pleasure.
Great book you've written here.
Thank you.
The Rise and Fall of Apartheid. Nigeria as a Factor. Thank you.
Indeed, a pleasure.